back to the B2B Uncut podcast, sponsored by Commerce. And I am once again your host for this episode, Aaron Sheehan, Director of Product Marketing at Commerce. And with me today is a gentleman by the name of Jack Ampuja. Am I saying your last name right?
That's correct, Aaron.
Perfect. I'm glad we talked ahead of time about exactly how to say that. Really happy to have you here. You got a wealth of experience. You've even got a personalized sign behind you. I can see for any of the podcast viewers that are looking at this. Jack has like a really cool picture of himself. It looks like in driving a truck. Is that right? Is that you?
Well, from one of my staff meetings from a number of years ago, people that ran the meeting, my staff people had asked that they run the staff meetings. And so they would always come up with little things, Jack in the box, for example, Jack in the reefer box, Jack in the pizza box. So I've got a number of those things around my office.
Makes complete sense. Okay. Well, so that gives us a little bit of a clue, I think, about maybe your background and your experience. But why don't you elaborate on that a little bit and tell everybody listening who is the Jack in the Box that they are listening to today?
Yeah. So I'm a supply chain veteran. This is the only work that I've done since I came out of university. I had no educational background in supply chain management, but fell into it by sheer chance, and then later went back to fill in my educational gaps and spent my time primarily with large firms. I've been a vice president in several companies. I'm also known as a teacher. I've taught supply chain management at 4 universities on a part-time basis. And for the e-commerce audience, I think the appropriate things are that I've worked in e-commerce for a couple of big companies, but I've spent the last 20 years teaching and consulting primarily the e-commerce field. So I've worked with many big firms, companies like Toys R Us, Office Depot, Walmart, Target. Those are some of the companies that I've crossed paths with in this arena. And about 10 years ago, my alma mater, the University of Massachusetts, asked if I would teach for them based on my background. And I said, I'd be interested in doing that. What do you have in mind? And they said, you tell us anything you want to teach, we're willing to run. So with that invitation, I created what may be the country's only MBA course on the logistics of e-commerce. And the reason that I went in that direction is that the logistics piece of e-commerce is the Achilles heel for almost everybody. They don't really struggle with the website, pricing, return policy, things like that, product offering. But everybody has the holy grail. How can I get one parcel delivered to one door for no higher cost than having someone go to a retail store? No one has uncovered that yet. So that's the magic that everyone's looking for. So I teach in that program. I teach that course, and my students have been in places like Mexico, Brazil, Dominican Republic, all up and down the United States. The UMass online course, the MBA program, not my course, but the program as a whole is ranked among the top 5 in the world. So I get terrific students, and for me, it's joyful to be involved with them.
It's fantastic and a lot of good experience. A lot of our customers at Oro and a lot of the people that I've worked with over the years, a lot of manufacturers, for instance, they're used to selling through to a distributor network, perhaps. They're used to functioning in that role. They think of, we could sell directly to consumers, or maybe there's a particular product line that we could sell directly to consumers. There's also a pretty fair amount of the market where e-commerce for manufacturers and distributors is the portal by which their suppliers and wholesalers are ordering from them, which is also e-commerce, right? But it's e-commerce usually in larger than a single parcel, right? It may be LTL or full truckload or full container. It's all e-commerce at the end. I think that it would be pretty fair to say that e-commerce is pretty well known in the direct consumer world, thanks to a lot of the brand names that you mentioned who have had websites who sell direct to consumers for some time, or they operate marketplaces now like Walmart does also, in addition to the brick and mortar stores. But in the B2B world, it's much less well known. There's an awful lot of faxes flying back and forth from, an office somewhere to somebody's desk somewhere else. And I am curious to get your opinion on something. I think e-commerce is still a foreign language to a lot of folks in the manufacturing and distribution world, because the old way of doing things I pick up the phone and call my rep, right? My rep shows up at my facility. He's got the catalog, he's got the sheet, he's got, whatever that I need to place the order. The idea of going online and doing it is still, we're still a little behind there. So I am curious to get your perspective. Why do you think that is? Why has e-commerce been so slow to be adopted in the business to business world relative to how thoroughly it's penetrated the consumer world?
Yeah, it's an interesting observation. I hadn't really thought of e-commerce in the perspective that you've laid out, but I think it's a very accurate telling of what's going on. And my view is that the system that exists, the B2B system, has worked pretty well. People are used to it. It's reliable. I can get what I need. If it's not broken, why would I fix it? You really need a call to action that either there's a competitive threat, I have to do something because I'm going to get displaced, or you get customers that say you need to do something, or I'm going to go elsewhere. And there hasn't been that kind of call to action that both sides are satisfied with the current situation. It's working okay. And I think the opposite has happened in the consumer world, where consumers have been very, very quick to gravitate to technology. Almost everybody's got a smartphone. They've got computers. They don't like the hassle of going out and standing in line. I went to Walmart yesterday, stood in line for many minutes to return a product. It isn't, and you have to drive there, and so on. And if it's one thing, you really want to go outside for one item. So the convenience of being able to order from home has really triggered that thing, and it's become such a common way of life for most of us that it's just accepted. And that has not happened yet in the B2B. That needs somebody to drive it. And if there's an innovator, for example, if Amazon or somebody big like that starts to offer a B2B offering, and they do in some arenas. And so when you see that kind of competitive threat, it's either change or go out of existence or get badly damaged. At that point, then there is that call to action and something will happen.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think I think back to my experience, some of the early driver, Zoho and Granger on the B2B side from the distribution end of it were very early adopters, and you'll find those folks kind of all over the place in the B2B world now, talking about that e-commerce center of excellence. Is that driving of the change
Mm.
that is the challenging part. One of the conversations I've regularly had with companies that are thinking about this is that you're exactly right. Nobody's driving it. And from an execution side, it's no one person's job or one team's job.
Mm.
E-commerce, and I'd be curious to know if you have seen this on the consumer side as well, but e-commerce is often what you might call a university, an interdisciplinary program, meaning that it's a little marketing, it's a little
Mhm.
IT, a little customer service, it's a little fulfillment. As a program or a channel, of course, it serves multiple functions, but it often does not have a vested owner in it, at least not at first. It almost has to grow and be recognized as a channel that is worthy of having sort of, VP or C-level advocacy. I'm curious if you have seen that as well, and maybe how you've seen companies successfully get that driver and that innovator to
Mm.
build such a program.
Yeah, I think your observations are right on target. I had lunch today with a logistics consultant in the Buffalo area where I live, and he and a company I'm familiar with, one of my former clients, they're starting an e-commerce warehousing company. So this is the typical approach that I've got two accounts. I'm going to start an operation with them. So I get a small building. It's very manual, but it gets me into the game. Well, then the thing starts to grow that I add another account. They want additional services. It slowly grows. At what point do you stop the operation and say, hey, let's reconfigure this thing and really get efficient? You don't, because, hey, it's working okay. So I just kind of keep building on that. And it's the same thing in the retail world, that particularly, and you touched on it already, Aaron, that it's a selling function. And when I go in as a consultant, I like to see a multidisciplinary team, because everyone's got an oar in the water for good reason. If I'm dealing only with the supply chain VP, he can't make all the decisions. We need a finance involvement. We need marketing in there. If there's a manufacturing piece, maybe procurement. So it's the multidisciplinary team approach that works. And to me, one of the bugaboos of this situation is that the typical approach is, when it gets to a certain size, Then we name a leader, and typically it's not someone who has been well versed in e-commerce because we don't have that kind of person on board. So then we select somebody who's sort of a good up and comer, typically a sales manager. Hey, we need growth. So let's get a sales manager in there. Well, the operational end is something that never occurs to this man or woman because that's not their expertise. So we kind of go off the track. I just finished writing an article about missed opportunities in e-commerce, and there's a ton of them, and it's because of this phenomenon we're talking about where it starts small and it sort of starts to grow, that very few companies come in with a clean sheet of paper saying we're going to be really big. We need a 1 million square foot warehouse. What kind of equipment, the layout, and so on. We don't go to that. We start small in a building and then slowly start to convert. And the building that's been set up for pallet deliveries or truckload deliveries is not geared for that kind of single package pick and pack. So I set up a little corner that slowly starts to grow, but it's never really efficient because it hasn't been designed correctly from scratch. But on the other hand, I can't really afford to take the system down to fix it and get to where I want to be. So I just kind of keep building on this sort of loose network that it's getting me there, but it's not really functioning the way I'd like to see it work long haul.
And that makes complete sense and mirrors a lot of the experience that I've had. Of course, in the B2B land, that's less of a challenge. You're already delivering power and truck. And so it's less about the fulfillment often, I've found, and more about the staffing and the org problem, because it's a new channel that has, to your point, there isn't anybody that already knows how to do it. If there was somebody who knew how to do it, we would have already been doing it. It's sort of catch 22. So it becomes somebody's side hustle almost, or it becomes given to marketing or given to a sales leader, or sometimes given to IT because, well, it's a website. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know how hard can it be. One of the things that uh, sort of jumped out at me here is the sort of the sales component of that. You mentioned sort of a sales manager given this job. Do you ever see, or do you ever part of sort of like channel conflict conversations inside of sales organizations around e-commerce? Is there ever a fear that this is cannibalizing or otherwise? There's sort of a zero sum game or it's a fixed pie. And like, if we divert basically incoming sales to e-commerce, we are therefore effectively taking money away from other ends of the business. Does that conversation ever happen in your
I think
consultation?
I think it's a natural concern that because it's an unknown area. So what's the gain? I don't want to go into something unless there's a substantive gain to be had. I'm going to get volume. I'm going to get profit. I'm going to get revenue. I've got to be getting some value for this. So I really don't know what I'm going to get. But many companies back into the e-commerce arena saying that everybody else seems to be there. If we're not there, we're kind of missing the boat. And at some point, it may be too late. So kind of for self-preservation, let me back into it. And I really don't want to spend a lot of money up front because I don't know if the thing is really going to go. But I just need some kind of a germ of a start. And let's get some boxes in here and let's start offering a few products. The website obviously needs to be constructed. And then let's kind of watch how it grows. But if it's indicative of like the retail world, it's going to ramp up very, very quickly. And then it becomes kind of a monster that I opened the cage and this thing is already out there. The warehouse isn't set up for it. I'm really not used to doing that kind of thing. Who's going to manage it? Where is it structured? And if you start with a clean sheet of paper, it's a lot easier. But most of us don't have that luxury. I'm already in a business, and this is kind of an add-on. And at a certain point, it gets to the size where I have to staff up, and I need a recognition. It needs to have its own business unit. Need to start measuring. If it's a couple of orders a month, who cares? When it gets to be 2,000 orders a month, a whole bunch of people begin to care. And now I'm playing catch up at that point. So companies kind of back into it and it takes on a life of its own. And then it's like a horse. It was kind of a colt that was all right, but now I've got a charging steed. Oh, what do I do now? How do I control it?
I like
Sounds
that.
familiar, right?
It does. I does. I like the metaphor. In the manufacturing space, I'm curious about channel conflict where a manufacturer, let's say, has been traditionally selling through a distributor network. And somebody comes up with the bright idea, what if we bypassed that and sold our product directly to consumers? Obviously, there are the fulfillment challenges that you've talked about. It's a totally different persona that you're shipping to. Um, But like, how do you see businesses actually navigate that successfully with, I suppose, making their distributors not spooked by the fact that the manufacturer is going direct to consumers? Have you been in the room for a conversation like that where the manufacturer is trying to convince distributors or wholesalers, hey guys, no, this is actually better for you in the long run if we sell direct to the customer? I'm super curious how that conversation might
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. I have not been in the room during the conversation with a distributor, but I've been there during the conversations without the distributor that, what's that going to do for us? And let's just look at one of the big companies that I worked for many years ago, Procter and Gamble, worldwide name, tremendous public recognition, quality. So P&G brand, the P&G recognition rides that if I put it out on the internet, people aren't going to wonder what is it. They know almost every product will want to order it, but that raises a threat to the retailers. What is the retailer going to say if I start taking volume away from him? It's my brand, obviously, but I've already got an existing relationship with all the big retailers around the world, so I better be pretty careful with that. That on the one hand, I want the direct connection to the consumer because that's my lifeblood and that's where the long haul growth is going to come from, but I can't really afford to damage the retailer in the middle because they could hurt me. They could hurt me very, very badly in the marketplace by dropping my product, for example, or giving me very bad positioning in the supermarket or the retail store. So that's a very, very tough line to walk. And I don't know what the right answer is. Every company is going to have to come up with their own conclusion. I also do know, and I think you probably got some examples, Aaron, of companies that have said, "Yeah, we're going to go and do this ourselves," and then you find out how difficult it is, and we're really not geared up for it. It's something we're not used to. And then next thing, I'm calling a logistics company saying, "Hey, could you take this thing over for us because it's really out of our realm of expertise." And even if I build that expertise, it's never going to be as valuable to me, or may not for years and years be as valuable as the normal retail. And so I probably don't want to play in that. Let's, I think the natural inclination is let me be in charge of it to start with. And then very quickly you find out it's like punching the old taffy bar, right? I get to sucked in and it gets harder and harder to deal with. And I really find out I don't have the expertise. It is a different animal. And unless I really gear up for it with systems and with people, I might be better off to either outsource it or somehow steer clear of it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think this is where, at this point, Jeff Bezos comes knocking in. Well, it's not Jeff anymore, and says, "Hey, FBA, would you like to just like, why don't you sell me?
Sure,
And we'll don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. All we want is your customer data, the
sure.
margins, and the IP, and like it would be an excellent win-win situation for you. What could go wrong?" No, I think that's exactly right. I'd be curious to know. So again, because Oro Commerce is of course a B2B platform, and our customers are the manufacturers and distributors, which is why the line of questioning is sort of like going in this direction. Um, have you ever helped anybody implement a something like e-commerce for a, let's say, a manufacturer selling to a distributor or a distributor selling to a retailer? Or have you seen it done ever well? Or maybe have you ever seen it done poorly? You just gave a pretty good, I think, picture of what can happen in a D2C, direct consumer kind of e-commerce world, the taffy bar analogy. I'd be curious to know if you've seen anything like that on the business to business side.
And on the business to business side, I have been in with some really big players to kind of talk to them about. I work on packaging optimization, that how many boxes do you need and so on. So every whether you're a retailer or whether you're a B2B, you're going to have that same issue. So I've been in to talk to them about it, and it makes a little more sense to the retail oriented crowd because of their orientation toward the individual product and the coloring of it and the sizes and so on. Whereas in the B2B world, it's much more of a commodity, if you will. Flashy. I don't need the same flashiness. I don't invest in the same kind of product marketing. It's a different kind of a world. But I think many companies, again, as I mentioned earlier, they fall back on that. I have to be in the game. But the advantage for a distributor in the B2B world is that they're already dealing with a lot of small things. Uh, a lot of individual picks, all kinds of SKUs. That's the world that they've lived in for years. To take a big retailer, a retail-oriented manufacturer, let's say Kellogg's, for example, For them, it's huge volume, uh, a lot of SKUs, but limited compared to a traditional distributor. Distributor will have thousands of products, so they're already in that world. So we're not giving them something new, but it's my experience has been that most people looking at this dilemma, should I be in the game or shouldn't I? It depends on their customers. So if the customer says, "Hey, I need you to be in that game. I want to start ordering online," and when we have to do business like that, if I get that customer call, that's going to start the wheels churning until I hear customers. And there are some things like working together, a customer and a manufacturer, and I'll say private brand manufacturer. I'm making your label. So when I go and talk to the manufacturer, he says, "Well, I make um, product for 29 different companies. All I put a slightly different label, but it's the same stuff. Nobody has complained. So why would I want to do anything different? There's no reason to rock the boat." I go out and I talk to the individual distributors who then are getting those products. Distributor one says, "Why I'm only one of 29 people. I can't move the manufacturer that I'm so small in his whole world." And then one by one, they all kind of beg off saying, uh, neither side wants to move on this issue, yet I see opportunity galore. If they could get around the table and say, how do we work together to skin this cat? And we can all be more efficient. There's opportunity, but getting somebody to take the first step is very difficult.
I completely agree. You mentioned at the outset that one driver for this is competitive pressure, certainly. And one of the things that I have seen many times is what drives that collaboration is you'll have let's say a distributor who is losing share to a competitor who has an e-commerce strategy, meaning that their buyers are able to self-serve, buy products at when and where they want without having to wait for someone to pick up the phone. And this is, this assumes that none of the players involved are big enough to just have it all automated through EDI. Because at a certain level, the Kellogg's, the P&Gs, the Nestle's of the world, the Unilevers, et cetera, obviously your big box retail to the manufacturer and distributor, those are going over the wire as EDI transactions for the most part. I'm talking about the sort of the glorious mid-market that makes up the
Yep.
majority of the business here. And this is where, I'll be in conversations with someone who say, we have accounts they're still accounts with us, but we're seeing less revenue per account because they're starting to flirt with the competition because they're seeing that it is easier to do business with the newer competition because they can buy, they can reorder, they can get a hold of somebody online and they're not waiting for stuff. And what's fascinating, and I was just having a conversation with a large manufacturer last week who was talking about, we have buyers who only buy a small portion of our catalog. And they don't even know, like we do all this stuff. Here is our massive multi-vertical, multi-industry catalog. They're buying the same 20 or 30 things over and over and over again, which is great. But we don't have an effective way of getting in front of them with the other things because the reps are just taking the order that were given to them. There's no upselling, there's no cross-selling, there's no education. And this is the kind of stuff that I see where it's maybe we're not losing customers, but we're losing revenue per account
Mm.
because those customers they're buying stuff from other people that they could be getting from us. They don't know that we sell it, right?
Yeah, yeah, that would appear to be a terrific entry point for e-commerce to say that get a word out into the industry that hey, we've got this platform and start looking at that as a new source of revenue to go after business that we haven't had before because it's got to be punishing for any company to realize that I've got products that this customer of mine could be buying if only we could make that connection. That there's no reason that I'm losing that business. It's only lack of knowledge that's causing me to lose that situation. So how do I fix that?
That's exactly right. And there's so much merger and acquisition activity in this space that oftentimes when the customer that account got onboarded, maybe you only sold a few thousand things, but you've picked up four more distributors and another manufacturer since, and now your catalog is much larger, but nobody ever told that story back to your existing
Mhm.
accounts. I love this. So I'm curious. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that the issue is for everybody that even if we are a new company and we make an entry, we're an existing distributor, but we make an entry into e-commerce. How many customers will take the time to start scrolling through our website and to try to find products that they'll go to the website and they'll continue to order the same things. We've got to get some kind of flash in there or some kind of notification. Hey, we've got this deal or we've got this product, or to scrutinize your orders to say, hey, if you had added this product, we've also got a complementary product. And certainly the good websites can do that kind of thing where once you've got somebody on the website, that's your opportunity to make the presentation, right? You don't want them to just buy the same stuff and you miss an opportunity. Hey, if you order now, I'll give you this discount. Or if you order these two things together, I can do something as an add-on, because that's the opportunity. You don't want to miss that opportunity. It doesn't come by that often.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'd be remiss, I guess, then in mentioning that Oro Commerce has the ability to
Yeah,
cross-sell and upsell recommended
yeah,
products to customers based on both manual
yeah,
assignment. You can create a segment, or we now have an integration with Google
yeah,
AI to be able to suggest recommended products. And this is exactly why,
yeah,
because you want that
yeah.
flash that you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a huge value added opportunity, and you want to take advantage of every one of those opportunities. When you've got a customer on your website, the most maddening thing for everyone is the shopping cart abandonment. Right? Somebody's already started an order and they've put a couple of things into the cart, and the next thing they disappear. Well, you need to know, why am I losing that opportunity? If the guy was serious enough to get on the website, start placing an order, and then I lose him, there's something that went wrong during the process, because that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let me ask you one last formal question, then I'll ask you an informal question at the end, which is, what's one piece of supply chain or logistics advice you'd give a company that's contemplating adding e-commerce as a channel?
I would say think very carefully. I think you need to be in the game. That anyone at this point who is wondering whether e-commerce is viable and should we get on that should we get on that horse, um, that horse is already running. So you need to be in the game, but you also need to think through, because you don't want to make a mistake on it and go into it badly and then sort of have to backtrack. So that idea about starting slow, even if it's not the most efficient way, start slowly so that you can always make corrections, but don't wait too long thinking, "Well, I need sort of like the perfect situation to get into it," because others are already doing things around you. And the longer you wait, the more difficult it's going to be to crack into it and become a player. So get started. In fact, I guess one of the analogies I can offer here is that I worked with a guy that had a speech impediment and a lot of speech impediments are related to nervousness. The more nervous you get, the harder it is to reach a word. So this guy that worked for me, he was trained during his sessions that just say something to get started. So you'd pick up the phone and call him, and he'd go, "Merry Christmas," for example, in July, because as soon as he said something, then he was rolling at that point. But if he got hung up on that word, nothing came out. So the idea is, just get started, because you can make corrections once you're started. If you're not in the game, you can be so far behind once you get into it. The rules have already been made. You're just an afterthought at that point. So
I
that to me is the biggest thing, that you need to be there and get started, and then work on making it better as time goes along.
I couldn't agree more. I've given the exact same advice
Yeah,
when asked this question before. One of my favorite quotes that I probably overuse is, a good plan violently executed today is better than the perfect plan executed next week, which is a great approach, because you only learn by doing. If you
yeah,
you will never learn what your customers want and how your business actually functions until you actually start doing it.
yeah. And then as a corollary to that, Aaron, I would offer a plug for Oro and other people who are in the space, that anyone who's new, you're not totally bereft of opportunity or talent on your own, because there are companies that are already out there. They're tried and true. They've got experience. They've got connections. So I always tell people, go and talk to the companies you're already doing business with and ask them, how can they help you? Whether it's UPS or FedEx, or whether it's Oro. If somebody that's in the business, those people want to help you, because that's how they build their business. They're not going to cut you off. And they'd love to have you as a customer. But if you're not a customer today, many of them will help you, because you could be a customer tomorrow or next week. So there's a lot of opportunity. You don't have to start scouring the internet on your own and be the master of everything. Go to people that are already in the business, already in that channel, and say, "Hey, I want to get started. What can you do?" Many of them would be happy to do lunch and learn sessions or Zoom things to teach you, and again, get other people in the department, in the company involved, that if you're a one-man band trying to get us into e-commerce, that's almost a sure path to failure.
I have talked to, I've spent a lot of time with people who would self-identify as one-man bands or one-woman bands trying to get into e-commerce, and it is a lonely place. I would also say maybe a plug for you is that if they're trying to learn, there possibly is a place in a college class somewhere if they live in the Northeast. I have one sort of final informal question for you, and this is a question I ask all of the guests, and take it as you like. But I always ask people, what is one book or movie or TV show or magazine that you've read in the last few months that stuck out to you, that you enjoyed? It does not have to be serious. It can be something that is pure enjoyment. So it can also be something educational. It's completely your call. But one piece of media that you would recommend to other people.
That's an interesting thing because my wife is a librarian and is a voracious reader and chides me that I don't read enough. Although I find books that are interesting. I'm reading a best-selling murder mystery from Sweden that I happen to find. My surname is a Nordic name. It's Finnish, so I just happened to see this book and I thought, gee, that sounds kind of interesting. And so I had no particular reason to reach for it, but I spent so much time reading online and magazines. I subscribe to all kinds of magazines, and I'm a big fan of the business world. So I'm continually reading to see what other people are doing and what's the new thing. I'm intrigued as anything about artificial intelligence because it's here now. It's going to change stuff every which way. I don't think we even are conceiving yet of what's possible with artificial intelligence, but just some of the things I've read about with the medical world, for example, that artificial intelligence can look at X-rays and find potential problems with people that any expert or a group of experts will look at will not be able to see. And I say, man, that's pretty phenomenal. We've got computers to that kind of a level and 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 I'm not personally concerned about many of us being replaced by computers. You're not going to be replaced by a computer, or neither am I. What computers do is they make good people much better. Gives us
Well,
tools
I
to be
hope.
more productive and so on. I'm trying to think of a specific. I don't have a specific a book, and I watch movies, but I go to movies for escapism. So the
Yes.
stuff that's not connected to the real world. Whether it's James Bond, I used to like the um, James Garner with when he was the private detective out on the West Coast living in that trailer. So kind of escapism because there's so many problems that come down in real life, whether intentional or unintentional, that I like when I read and so on. I like to get away from the real world situation.
Got it. Was that Rockford File? Is that what you're referencing?
Rockford Files, exactly. Yeah,
Okay, there
exactly.
you
You got a
go.
very good
I
memory.
thought, yeah, I thought,
I've actually been plowing through the Rockford Files for about the past year because every episode is available and I've seen almost every one of them, but there are a number of them I haven't seen. And even if I've seen it before, you pick up nuances and I get such a chuckle out of him as a character. And then Angel Martinez is his convict friend. Is such a character but that's the hallmark of every successful television series or every company. It's not one rock star. You've got a whole bunch of really good people working together as a team. That's what really makes the magic.
you know what? That is a really excellent point, and it connects totally to the e-commerce point that we were making earlier about interdisciplinary teams. E-commerce is an ensemble cast. It takes people representing every discipline and every part of the business coming together and collaborating, and it's also how you learn. Jack, I really appreciate this. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you sharing your experience with folks. Um, we're going to leave it there. But thank you again for coming on, and for all of you who are tuning in and listening. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening, and please like and subscribe, and check out the next episode that will be coming to a podcast service near you. Please rate us on podcast, Spotify, Stitcher if they're still around. I think they are, and there are a bunch more. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.